All right. Welcome, everybody, to a Mortgage Coach Trust Engine interview with Mr. Todd Ballenger, the one and only. It's been way too long, Todd, since I've had you on this channel. What's up, brother?
Man, it has. Good to see you. Happy summer.
Good to see you. So for all the new loan officers that tune in, Todd is the professor. He's actually a real live university professor at the University of Duke. Oh, I'm kidding.
No.
North Carolina State.
University of North Carolina, baby.
Oh,
UNC.
okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I knew I'd get it right. So yeah, these are not things you mess around with in the South, but we're good friends, so we go way back. So
and I know where you live, and I know where you live.
Yeah, he does. He was one of the co-founders of mortgage.com back in 2000 or pre-2000. 2000 was actually not a good year for any of us. But you know, Todd is someone who really knows the numbers. He knows the math of the mortgage industry. He knows strategy in the industry, you know, better than anyone. I mean, he's the guy I go to for advice on mortgage strategy. And he's got a lesson that he wants to bring to you. So this is going to be a college level, university level training. Did I set the bar too high for you, Todd?
Yeah, and you cannot apply these credits towards your transcript. I just need to know that.
Yeah, and to my marketing team, we cannot have any college university logos as part of how we promote this, you know, right?
Exactly. I've gotten in trouble there.
Yeah. Universities don't like that when the professors do this. Although somehow, what's his name? Huberman, you know, he does a pretty good job of building a pretty big brand for himself, despite the fact of being a Stanford University professor.
Yeah, sometimes they want you to do that. You know, you can get away with it if it's aiding and abetting something else.
Yeah, cool. So Todd, tell us what the lesson is and what we're going to come away from, and why should we tune in right now?
Awesome. So this topic, I mean, you know, depending on when you're watching this, it's possible that rates are a little higher than you'd like them to be. Not that that's never the case, but you got to have reasons to talk to people anyway, right? Because I think of, you know, living, marketing, sales, all that. Ideally, you're in a hadron collider and you want as many possible chemical reactions to happen as possible. And that involves getting out and talking and interacting with people. And you can't talk to them about refinancing in many cases right now. As we've shared, there's that sort of right tail of higher interest rates. You're seeing, put a graph on the Mortgage Coach site recently showing the percentage of loans that are being originated. And, you know, the 7 and 7.5% loans will eventually be refinanced because they're replacing 2, 3, 4, and 5% rates. But if you're a betting person, right, you don't want to go out and talk about refinancing to everybody right now. So what do you talk about? And if there's not a lot of inventory, you can't talk about buying a house in the same way. But mortgage acceleration was a fallback for me when I went through these phases where rates went really high. One of the facts about lending is that most loan officers focus on the entry strategy, you know, the borrowing. They don't focus on the repaying. And if you've ever borrowed money, you care about the repaying. It has a big impact on your life and your lifestyle, the interest that you pay and things like that. So today, I thought what we'd do is talk a little bit about the math, like how does amortizing and principal, kind of how do you think about the math and how do you talk about that? The mindset of the consumer and why repaying is really important to them. As we say, borrow smart, repay smart. You gotta borrow, but once you borrow, how do you repay it? And there's a real opportunity in teaching people the art of how to repay and repay effectively. And then the last part of this is going to be movement. We're going to kind of take an example of how you can use, for example, AI right now to stand up a strategy that you could promote and market to your clients very effectively and very efficiently in a way that it might get someone saying, hey, this is interesting to me. I'd like to have a conversation about this. And the reason that this is working well in many cases is these conversations are building a pipeline of people that can refinance based on a future target rate. Like I was having a conversation with a loan officer the other day who met with a client. They looked at their current cost of borrowing, their equity line, their other debts. And what they realized was they had a target rate of about 5%. And you may think, well, yeah, that's no big deal. But if you start building a portfolio and a pipeline of people that you've talked to, and you've established this target rate, when rates come down, you're going to start ringing the register and loading the boat again. But if you haven't done that, you've got to have all those conversations, right? And that's going to become, more difficult. So take the time now, learn, plant seeds, get ready for the next crop when it hits.
Yeah. By the way, when do you think rates will be in the fives? What's your best guess?
Next year.
Okay, we'll take it. That's what most people are saying. So first of all, let's talk about, where we're at in the market right now. So I just looked in our Rate Watch app, and, we index the optimal blue mortgage index rate, and it's got jumbos at, 7.1 and conforming at the, high 6.7. So let's just say, 6.8, 7.1, which in this chart right here, puts, interest rates off the chart. Like these are all the interest rates at 2%. These are all the interest rates in America at 3%. These are all the interest rates at 4%. So 63% of all mortgages in America are 2 or 3, and rates are, let's just say 7%. So like, we're recording this right now at the end of July of 2023. But here's what I know. Wait, stop before you share that real quick. And by the way, I want to see that chart in a minute.
Okay.
Like, you always have better. I should know better than to show a chart with Todd, because he's going to show a better chart.
Chart combat is fun.
Yeah, but here's something I want to say, and then let's have the lesson. Show the data, have the lesson. For this entire decade, and I do believe going forward, like this is a shift, a seismic shift in mortgage, to where we need, like, it was always a good idea to think about, the mortgage within the consumer's long-term view. Like, that was a competitive advantage. I mean, I founded MortgageCoach on that premise. Todd wrote the book Borrow Smart on that premise. We've spent our life on this, but we are now in a new era, and at Trust Engine, we call it financial freedom lending. You need to optimize for financial freedom lending. And another key, just a tenet that we live by is coaching over selling. Like we are no longer in an era in mortgage where we can do that. And so what Todd's going to share right now, in into July of 2023, guys, I guarantee you, while this lesson is going to have more value, and it's like one of the very few conversations you can have with every borrower in this market, but it's going to have relevance. I don't care whether rates are high, whether they're low. And let's face it, rates are never, with 63% of the mortgages at 2 and 3, they're never going there. Best case, they get into the 4s. So we are now, operating and lending. I'm going to show one more chart. Don't trump me on this one.
I won't.
But I started right here in fall of 86. For the first, 5-ish years I was in mortgage, rates were over 10. And then look, it's a straight line down, and they bottomed out, guys. And now they're up here, and they're probably going to flatten right here. But 63% of all mortgages will be less than that. So I just want to make the point, like, the lesson that we're going to teach you right now, it's got shelf life. It's going to be really valuable. Todd, anything else you want to say before you go?
No, I agree. Again, part of the art of being, someone that's teaching from the financial component here is to understand that you start the conversation with the borrowing. The long tail conversation is about the repaying. And what's going to happen is there are going to be opportunities to refinance. There are going to be opportunities when they have lump sums of cash that come available. They're going to have free cash flow. Those are all repaying conversations. And it's a great way to keep the conversation with the client going over 20 to 30 years, because as we know, 2/3 of Americans still in retirement have not paid off their mortgage, right? They're still paying. And that means they're still having their own conversation in their head about what they should be doing. Should I be repaying? Should I be investing? What should I be doing? And knowing that tension is there, one of the values that you provide with knowledge and experience is helping people relieve tension, and that's helping them make good decisions.
Let's go. Show us some slides. Walk us through the lesson.
So the one shot I wanted to show you, just this is on on my Facebook page, but This showing the debt above is the existing debt, and the below debt is the replacing, or I'm sorry, this is the existing debt that's replacing this debt. So what you can see here is this is all new debt. So this is last month. So you'll notice here, look at the new debt that's being issued last month. It's ranging from 7% to as low as 4.5%. That's new debt being boarded. And look what it's paying off. It's paying off 2% debt, 2.5% debt, 3% debt, 3.5% debt, and 4.5% debt.
So it's happening.
Huh?
So it's happening. I mean, people are doing, and that's another point, guys. Like, business is happening. You know, it's harder than ever, but it requires education. By the way, you're going to give us these slides, I take it? Like, am I going to get the slide deck?
I'll post them up after they're done. You can post them on your site or however you want to do it for folks. Yeah, so business is happening. So why would those people be refinancing? Life events, they've got to move, they got a new job, they're going to make another $50,000 a year relocating. Well, you're not going to stay in a handcuffed, 2% mortgage and give up on that. So these life events are happening all the time. People are also in a situation where as credit and debt and other things are happening. Recent case study, someone was making a major addition on their home and they had to use a home equity line for that. They were going to keep their 2%, right, existing debt, but they were going to be adding almost 8% second mortgage debt. So when that happens, you end up with a blended coupon, right? 8 and 2 might end up being a 4 or 4.5 or 5, or in this case, it was a 5.5% rate for that person. So these are things you want to know about, because you might have a client with a 2% first mortgage, but they've added additional credit card and other debts. And ultimately, you want to know what that blended coupon is, because that's the opportunity.
Hey, by the way, you said some of this stuff is on Facebook. I'm not seeing it on your Facebook account.
National Institute. It's all on the National Institute of Financial Education site.
Okay, well, we'll get a link to y'all on that. The National Institute
of Financial Education.
Financial Education. By the way, the site or on Facebook? They have a Facebook.
This is on Facebook. This is on Facebook. Yeah. So it's just facebook.com/NIFECLA, NIFECLA.
I found it.
Okay. And then I'm constantly creating charts, posting charts in there. There's always stuff happening.
Dude, I have not been following this. Yeah, it's really
what?
good.
Oh,
yeah.
Man,
No, it's really, really nicely done. So we'll put a link to this Facebook group down below. Get signed up. You posted this on July 11th, and I just gave it a love. All right.
Thank you, sir. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mortgage acceleration. I'm going to start off with kind of, math and mind, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to have some fun with it. So this is a little bit about the mind here, but why do people care about mortgage acceleration, right? Everyone, if they have debt, in most cases, they have an interest component. Unless someone's got an interest-free loan from their Uncle Benny, then that's probably going to be a higher interest rate loan. They have this sort of issue of this interest in this dynamic. This is really a cool way to find opportunities now. Some of the folks in our program that have these mortgage acceleration conversations and just giving this a go are learning about people buying a second home, a vacation property, investment property. And again, it's all about just the collision, getting out there, sharing your advice, talking to people. And what you really want to think about is this is a wonderful way to build a pipeline for future transactions. So if I can talk to people about paying off their house early or having a dream, we're not going to get a lot into that today, but I mean, there's so many different ways to talk about how to get someone excited about this whole conversation of when should I pay off my debt? What's the most efficient way to pay off my debt, et cetera. But repaying smart is important, okay? So again, think of yourself as if you're in the lending business and you help someone borrow smart, you help them at the point of their transaction to borrow in the most efficient way possible. What affects the cost of the loan over time is actually how they repay it. Once that decision's made, the concrete is hardened. I got a 30-year at 5%, right? Now, so here's some key things I want you to think about. People know debt is an obligation against future spending. Whether they know how to articulate it or not is a different thing. But when you borrow money, you are pulling forward your spending power from the future. You're telling your future self, you're going to have to pay this off with future dollars that you don't have right now. That's what borrowing is. And interest is the friction. It's the headwind against that debt. Because if I borrow $100,000 with no interest and I pay $1,000 a month, I only have 100 payments. But I know if I borrow at 6 or 7%, suddenly it's 300 plus payments, right? So this compounding is working against you. All right. That's important just to kind of keep in the back of your mind. You know this because most of you have loans and you have interest. And if you have interest, you understand that friction is sort of that thing between you and repaying the debt. So just one little thing to know is that 5.31% is an important number. Anytime when you borrow at 5.31, you're paying back exactly 2% of what you borrowed. If you borrow $100,000 at 5.31% on a normal mortgage, you'll pay back $200,000. If you borrow $400,000 at 5.31%, you will pay back $800,000. So above 5.31, why is that important? Psychologically, it's the point where you're paying back more than double what you borrowed. Under 5.31, you're paying dramatically less. So just keep that in the back of your mind because it kind of gives you a sort of a benchmark. Again, psychologically, this is a little bit about mind here. Another hack to think about is on a $400,000 mortgage, every 1% is $333 a month in interest. Now, we used to use this a lot. Every 1% per 100,000 has about an $85 interest cost to it. You've built this incredible software, Dave, and people use software all the time, but it's incredibly powerful to know things like this. If someone told me they had a $400,000 mortgage and they could lower their interest rate by 1%, I knew right away what? That's about $333 a month in interest savings on 1%. If they said I had a $500,000 mortgage, I would say in my head, 5 times 85, that's about $425. So, and they said I could save 2%. I knew right off the bat, I could save them about $800 a month. So these little hacks are fun because they can actually help you in a conversation where you're just talking to someone, be confident in saying, oh, you got a $200,000 mortgage? I mean, for every 1% we can save you, I can save you about $170 a month, right? So these are fun little things to kind of know, but know that more than anything, if you only remember one thing, there is tension. People want houses, they don't want debt. And when they borrow, you're making a dream happen now because they can't pay cash. And if they can't pay cash and they borrow, there's two components to borrowing typically, principal and interest. And we're going to talk about those two layers, the principal layer and the interest layer, and how they sort of interact with each other. Because once you understand that, you start to kind of get why mortgage acceleration works and what it's for. But at the simplest level, I want you to know that when people borrow, what? They're thinking about this thing. I got to pay this thing back, and I got to pay it back with interest. And they care about repaying smart, even if they don't know how to say they care about it. But they'll ask you questions like, should I get a 15 or a 30? Well, that's just a repayment strategy. One forces you to repay faster than the other, right? Should I pay interest only? Should I take extra money and pay? Should I invest? They're asking the same question. What and how should I repay my debt over time? All right. We good so far?
Yep. I'm
All
tracking
right.
and I'm loving it. And I love the hacks. I hope people are writing this down. I hope, if you're in the mortgage business, this is where you make the choice. Do I want to be average? Do I want to be good? Do I want to be exceptional, or do I want to be elite? Elite mortgage professionals take little nuggets like this and they master them. You know how to give advice to families, and you know how to have great conversations with families. And what Todd just shared you is something that everybody should master.
Absolutely. And I always say, I hated my first job in the mortgage lending industry. My mentor at the time made me do an amortization table by hand. It took me like a week and a half. I had to calculate it by hand. All he said is you got a sheet of paper, like a long legal pad, and he made me go line by line. But I learned something from that, right? I learned a lot about time value of money and how it takes 24 years to pay off the first half of a 30-year mortgage. I would have never learned that had I not taken that time, right, to go through that. So it pissed me off, but I also learned a lot, and it got me curious.
So that's what happened to you. Like
That's you call that the trauma that
yeah,
led
no,
to
yeah. So, and by the way, y'all don't need to do that. Like I am not going to
no,
call that out as a best practice.
no, no, no,
I
no.
probably would not be in the mortgage industry today if my first mentor did that to me. But thank God he just gave me the yellow pages and said, call every CPA in the yellow pages. And I'm like, I can do that. And when you need help, come get me.
Absolutely.
But
And that's why you're here, because you keep us from having to do that, which is really, really cool. So
but do learn that little hack. Like you saw how much work Todd had to do to be able to teach that to you. So now you take the summary. So just keep going. This is great.
all right. So when you think about a mortgage, there's two key layers. There's the interest layer and the principal layer. And I'm separating them for a minute because, again, you can be really good at presenting stuff, but you want to understand underlying what's really happening, right? So there's an interest layer and a principal layer. So we're going to take you through what looks like a lot of math and a lot of letters here on the page. But I want to just for a minute, because what's amazing is when you get this, you kind of get it intuitively. You can do it in your head, and then you use the software to make a really powerful story and a presentation. But when someone says to you, I want a $100,000 mortgage at 5% for X years, what I want you to immediately think about for a second here is that all I need to know for the interest layer is a $100,000 mortgage at 5%. The principal layer, that's where term comes in, and suddenly you're now taking something and forcing it into a term. It's going to be paid off. If I had an interest-only mortgage, I never need term because it's just the balance and the interest rate. So what this allows you to kind of do is, in a way, simplify for yourself lending. So if you realize that the X years is the principal layer, you realize when someone says to you, I want a 15 or a 20 or a 30 or a 5. Okay, what you've done is you've started forcing a term and a principal impact. And we'll look at an example in a minute, but let's just stay at the interest layer first. If I borrow 100,000 at 5%, I'm committing to 5,000 a year in interest at the interest layer. If I borrow 200,000 at 5%, I'm committing to 10,000 a year in interest. If I borrow 300,000 at 5%, I'm committing to 15,000 a year in interest. So if I borrow 300,000 interest only, what I'm saying is I'm committing to pay 15,000 a year in perpetuity, right? Because I'm just paying interest. So if I was going to have a house that I borrowed 300,000 for interest only for 30 years, I'm paying 15,000 over 30 years. I'm paying 400,000 in interest. But because it's interest only, I still owe 300,000. I've never paid back anything in the form of principal, because all the term layer does, the principal layer, is it forces the loan to terminate. And mortgage, that is Latin for term, mort or death, and gauge, gauge is term, right? Like you heard of measuring something or gauging something, that's time. And mort, if I go to see a mortician, I'm talking about death. So mortgage literally means death over time. So without a term, it's really not a mortgage. It's just you paying interest against your debt. But what makes a mortgage is when you add the principal layer and the term to it, at which point you're now saying, I'm going to pay interest plus principal to pay off a mortgage in a specific period of time, truly killing over time the debt in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. Make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Loving every minute of it.
All right. So then let's look at this thing called the principal layer. So no principal layer, it's just interest. Now add the principal layer. This is where the X years comes in. $100,000 mortgage at 5%. Well, for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 40, it doesn't matter. But once I add the X years, that principal layer is sitting there on top of that interest layer and saying, there's still the interest layer. You're going to pay that interest each month, just like we talked about, but there's going to be some extra. that extra, that amortization, that killing over time is the extra that you're paying to make that loan term out. So in our example before, an interest-only loan of that $100,000 mortgage at 5% has an interest principal payment each month of $416.67, which over 12 months is going to be $5,000. Siri wants to jump in. So at the interest-only layer, $416.67 a month forever. But now add the principal layer. I want a $100,000 mortgage at 5% for 5 years. Guess what? That $416.67 jumps to $1,887 a month. Ooh, I can't afford that. Okay, so let's look at a 10-year principal layer, because now if I'm going to term this out in 10 years, I'm going to pay $1,060. What is that $1,060 made up of? The interest layer and the principal layer, which is that balance. As it's getting paid down, the interest is going to get paid down and the principal is going to go up, but the target date of 10 years is going to be met. You're going to pay it off in 10 years. So the magic and the math that Dave's software does is it's calculating that for you over that time. And so when you see a payment and it says, hey, $100,000 mortgage at 5% for 30 years, the payment is $537. You know what? Right out of the gate, on that first payment, $416.67 is going to be interest. The difference is going to be principal. And we know over 30 years, that balance is going to shift. More and more principal is going to be paid. And as that principal is paid, less and less interest is going to be paid. But you're targeting that 30-year term. So that's the principal and the interest layer and how they sort of interact with each other. So what is mortgage acceleration? If you have a principal layer, you could say there's mortgage acceleration because you're saying I'm not paying interest only, and I've chosen 30 years as my acceleration period because I'm going to pay off in 30 years at $537 a month by paying some extra. But if I get a 30-year mortgage and the payment's $537, I could also make an extra $100 a month payment. Or if I just jump from $537 to $660, guess what? That loan's going to pay off in 20 years. And if I jump to $791, that loan's going to pay off in 15. So when people are focused on a 15 or a 20 or a 30, all they're really doing is restricting themselves and forcing themselves into a term, and thereby forcing themselves into a higher payment to pay that debt off over that term. Make sense?
Making total sense. We're getting as I promised everybody, a college level course on how money works, how math works, and
interest and time value, because that's really the business we're in, right?
Yeah, no, I'm loving it.
All right. So again, I like to say, make it simple for yourself. Calculate this by hand or in your head, but at least you don't have to do the 30-year AM table. But a $100,000 mortgage at 5%, we said was $5,000. So that's where the 5% comes in. But if I divide that by 12, I get 0.417. That's the interest cost per month. And if I divide by 360, I'm getting an interest cost per day. And there's a reason that can be important. I had a conversation with a loan officer recently who had a client that was saying, I want to pay this house. I want to pay $100,000 a few weeks after closing from the sale of a piece of property. How much would that save me in interest? And he was just trying to walk him through and kind of, conceptually explain it, right? And you do the presentation to get the real numbers, but how do you conceptually explain that? So if someone wants to borrow $300,000 at 5%, break it down for yourself. What does that mean? $300,000 at 5%. Well, I know right off the bat, I don't have to do a calculator. I can see 5% of $300,000 is $15,000. So that means over the course of the year, I'm paying $15,000 per year in interest on that debt without principal. But how much am I paying a month? Well, I just need to multiply the amount I borrow times 0.417 or divide this by 12. Either way, I get to $1,251 a month. And if I do the same thing, I can get to $42 a day. So just sometimes play around with this, do this for yourself, just so you kind of get a feel for it. And I say a feel for it, it's like an intuitive kind of an understanding of what's happening. Because when someone comes to you and says, hey, how How much interest will I save if I paid $100,000 a few days after closing on my mortgage? I'm borrowing 300, but I want to pay an extra $100,000 down. How much would I save? In your head, you should be able to say to yourself, well, $100,000 at 5% is $15,000 a year. So if you paid an extra $100,000 towards your mortgage, your $300,000 mortgage after closing, well, I'm not going to be perfect, but I can say it should be about $15,000 a year. And because you just took the mortgage out, right, 15,000 times 30 years, well, that's going to save you about what? 15,000 times 30. You could do the math. If it was 20 years, I could say 20 years times 5,000 in interest. If that's the interest per year, that's 100,000 in interest. I'm just taking, I know that if I pay $100,000 down, I'm saving 5%. 100,000 times 5% is 5,000. So for every year, I don't have to pay that 5,000. I'm saving that interest. So 100,000 would save me about 100,000 over 20 years. So you can play around with these kind of things, but intuitively, just for yourself, know if you said, okay, I want to prepay my mortgage, how much of the mortgage are you going to prepay? And you say, I'm going to pay $100. Well, how much would that save you? Well, you could multiply $100 times 0.014 and see how much that's going to save you interest per day. Or you could take $100 times 0.417, and that's how much interest you're going to save per month. Or you can take $100 times 5%, and that's how much that $100 is going to save you per year. And you start to kind of play around for yourself how this might play out. So someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to pay $1,000 extra towards my mortgage one time. What's that going to save me in interest? Well, again, $1,000 paid in principal is saving 5% in interest. So $1,000 times 5% is $50 per year. If the client had 20 years on a mortgage remaining, $1,000 payment, principal payment, is going to save them $50 a year for 20 years. They're going to save $1,000 in interest. Again, the TCA will do all this for you, but if it's doing it for you, you want to be able to, again, and kind of know intuitively what's happening. Or if someone says to you, I've got $10,000, take a moment. If I've got $10,000 extra lying around right now, and I were to pay that towards my house, and my mortgage is 4%, 10,000 times 4% is what? Do that math. Divide it by 12, and that's the monthly savings that you're going to generate by applying $10,000 towards your existing house payment. It's going to pay the mortgage off faster. I can't tell you in my head how many years it's going to pay it off faster, but it's going to then save you that amount. Most people care about cash flow and savings. They really care about repaying their debt. And why do they care about this, Dave? Because most clients, I've worked with clients, realtors, and advisors for 30 years. Clients feel like interest is bad. They know if they have debt that they shouldn't be paying, or they don't want to pay interest if they can avoid paying interest. So just know that's sort of baked into the process. If they feel it's bad, there's an opportunity to have a conversation, right? People will talk to you about aspirin more than vitamins every day. So if there's pain, right? If there's pain, and there is pain there, and the realtor feels interest rates bad because they have houses and they have mortgage debt as well. And what you're really doing is saying, look, you know, it's just, there's just interest. That's the cost of borrowing money over time. We could talk about how in this environment, you're actually being paid to have debt because the inflation's devaluing your debt. But the advisor, they know interest is bad because they feel like what? They have this sort of weird relationship with interest. And that's why we say there's rate, and then there's the rate has two meanings. If you're investing, interest is what you're making. That's your return. But if you're borrowing, the interest is what you're paying, and we call that a rate. So it's really interesting, right? It's rate and return. It's the same number, but your payment on your debt, the rate you pay, is somebody else's return.
Right.
Right. And when you invest, your return is somebody else's payment. So it's not that interest is bad. It's just in a perfect world, you'd rather have the interest coming your way in the form of return as opposed to going out the other way in the form of interest. So anytime you have a chance to make a decision to repay your debt or accelerate your debt, the first question is, what's your interest rate? Because that's going to help you determine what the highest and best use of your money is. But knowing that this is out there and that clients have this concern, it's really cool if you can do an illustration and show them, hey, you're going to retire in 12 years. Let's figure out what you'd have to pay extra to be debt-free in 12 years. You know, that can be a feeling type, feel-good conversation you can have. For other people, it's got $100,000. I just got an inheritance. I want to pay off the mortgage. Should I do that? Well, let's look at what's going to happen. You're going to earn 5% paying off the 5% mortgage, but maybe you're better off talking to a financial advisor and having that $100,000 invested over the next 20 years at 7 or 8%. That may be better for you, but you start to get a feel for how to have these conversations in an interesting way.
Very cool. I love this. These are powerful conversations. If you're watching this and you're getting value, any questions you have, put them down below. Any comments you have, put them down below. For those of you that are taking this insight and you're creating total cost analysis, I would love to see samples of the total cost analysis that are being created where you're showing families how to accelerate mortgage prepayment. And when you're accelerating financial freedom, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, my goal with this trust engine community is to help mortgage professionals, help families do more than get loans, help families achieve financial freedom. And, you know, being able to know things without technology is important, and knowing how to deliver this to a consumer is important. Todd, where are we at in the lesson? And, you know, what advice do you have for mortgage coaches?
I'm gonna do this slide. I'm gonna jump to a TCA, and then we're gonna talk about the movement component, just how you can, you know, utilize this stuff to engage people in conversations with your current client base, and we'll wrap it up.
It's cool.
Cool. So when we say, what are the questions that people have? This is an important thing to consider. They're asking, what do I repay? That's one of the key questions that clients are going to ask you. And that means they have debt, they may have credit cards, they may have not just their mortgage, but other debts. So being a liability advisor, you're really helping them to understand, look, what are your debts? What are your balances? What are your payments and rates? Let's figure out what to repay. The next question is when to repay, right? Each month they have extra cash and cash flow. So what are you going to repay? And then when do you repay it? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? This is another part of creating a repay smart plan that you can incorporate into your conversation. And then lastly, how to repay. And this is a lot of the mind and psychology. Sometimes you want to pay off a lower interest rate debt that has fewer payments, just to show them, to get the ball rolling, that they can actually pay things off quickly and have some wins. In some cases, they may want to pay off all their debts and never pay off their mortgage because there's a reason financially to never actually pay off your mortgage, which we talk about, you know, in the book. But you know, at the end of the day, the mortgage should almost always be the last debt that they typically repay because it's low interest rate and you've got an appreciating asset, you know, appreciating asset stacked against it. But these are questions that are going to happen. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you 2 ways that you could stand up a website for your clients and write an incredibly cool letter in about 2 minutes using
Love
AI.
this.
All right. So we're going to play around with some AI here. So I was, you know, playing around with this early. Again, what's beautiful about, you know, the software that Dave's created is you can come in and very visually show somebody, hey, here's what you've got today. This is where you're going to end up. And again, when you're in the world of financial advice, the most powerful thing you can do is start with do nothing, because that is the state people are in and that's where they are. And if you leave them and they don't move and take action, their state is going to be that do nothing state. As a catalyst, you're trying to say, if you don't do anything, here's what's going to happen. But if you take my advice, or if you listen to me, this is what's possible. So if you set it up that way, you're helping people to understand that, look, when I leave, if you don't do anything working with me, that's okay. This is what's going to happen. But if you do work with me, these are the possibilities. This is the potential interest that you may pay here versus here, or that I can have you debt free for example, in 13 years or 18 years compared to the 30 years that you were going to be debt-free if you do nothing but stay with your current plan or strategy. Okay.
Todd, will you share that TCA? And I'm going to call this the Todd Ballenger Mortgage Acceleration TCA. So
Sure.
Todd
Sure.
Ballenger's Mortgage Acceleration TCA. And I love that best practice of benchmarking, here's doing nothing, here's doing something with me.
Absolutely.
But I want to remember, guys, I want to see how you're having this conversation and how you're showing families how to accelerate their financial freedom.
Absolutely. And so let's get into the movement. So let's say you buy into some of this and you're like, okay, this is kind of interesting. I don't get it all yet, but I get that there's a principal and an interest layer. My clients might want to pay off their debt. So how do I write a letter to them that might be engaging? This is where, again, AI is so cool. So I'm just coming over here. I'm using ChatGPT. There are 50 different solutions you can use now. But I would come in and say, write a compelling letter to a client about how important it is for them to consider how they repay their debt to reduce interest, with a call to action to go visit my mortgage acceleration website and sign up for a free TCA analysis on debt repayment. Now, you can go much deeper on these. And this is one of the things I've seen a lot. People, they aren't really taking the time to prompt, but the more that you give it, the better job that it will do. So it's going to give you a subject: your future financial freedom awaits, important debt repayment opportunities. Dear client, trust this message finds you well. As a financial partner, I want to write to underscore an important aspect of financial management. It could impact your financial future. Just like you, many hardworking people around the world are battling debt, blah, blah, blah. Accrued interest is debt, blah, blah, blah. I invite you to visit our mortgage acceleration website, where we offer comprehensive total cost analysis, completely free of charge, et cetera,
that.
Right? To receive your TCA, please visit here, website URL, and sign up today. Our financial experts will
let's go.
Right? So now this is a pretty comprehensive letter. And I can say, this looks really good. Use the above letter, but make it shorter and more friendly, right? So if you get a version of this, you're like, hey, this is kind of cool, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for, but I'm going to build on the above. And I'm just now going through, and now it's saying, hey, hi, client's name. Hope this finds you in high spirits. I know managing debt can be a bit overwhelming. Now, again, in the classic world of marketing, you would split test this. I would send 100 clients one and 100 clients the other, and I would have and see which one responds better. And let's just say that this one responds better. So I get 100 clients, the formal letter above, the email, and I'm going to tweak it a little bit, right, with anything, and I'm going to send 100 this, and this one performs better. Now I'm going to do another split.
Wait. I'll see what you're doing. I got a couple prompts I want you to do before we.
Same as above, but more formal. Now I'm going with a shorter one here, right? But I'm going to, dear client, I trust you well as a valued client. Your financial health is really important, right? So now I'm going to, and what I love about this from a split testing standpoint is now I'm going to send 100 more clients this one and 100 this one, and just do the same thing. Which one tests a little bit better in terms of activity and engagement?
And let's do and turn this into a Facebook post or LinkedIn post, but let's just go with Facebook. And okay, and then I got another one, guys. And then go, give me 5 headlines, please. You don't have to say please, by the way, but give me 5 headlines.
The 5 headlines for this post.
Boom. And let's have one more little fun. give me 5 tweets. So guys, you're getting all kinds of ammunition, and now let's take our favorite headline here. What's your favorite headline, Todd? You pick a number real quick.
Let's see. Wondering, stressed with debt, see your financial future. Start your journey to financial freedom. Let's just go with this first and take the first step.
Hey, copy that.
Okay.
And go write an article from this headline. So guys, all in like 5 minutes. I mean, we're all over the place, but I just want to really emphasize, it's never been easier to create content. But by the way, you need to be a strategist. You need to know this stuff. Need to know what to recommend to a consumer. And now you can actually create some content, and you have a writing assistant to help you do it. Anyways, we're kind of going backwards now. We've got something really long, but you guys have phrases. You've got a lot of different ideas that came from different perspectives. You had your digital assistant help you with some headlines, and then hey, let's do a rewrite based off our full headline. So anyways, back to you, Todd.
So I'm going to take what you just did. I'm going to say,
right. By the way, I do got to jump in, 5-ish. So I don't know where you're at in the lesson.
Yeah, no, we're good. I'm going to show you one more thing. So write 5 follow-up emails based on this content. So let's just say that you want to create a really simple campaign, and someone's going to sign up. What I really like is this gives you, it's going to go through and write you 5 emails. So you've got them now queued up, and you can drop them into something. There's so many really great tools out there. I'll show you one that's called Mixo, and I just built this earlier. And all I did was I typed in a prompt. I don't know if we need to do it right now, but put in a prompt, create a mortgage acceleration website. And it just built this in a matter of seconds. And you'll see it says retire free. It's got the email capture. It's got the headline, save thousands, achieve financial security, increase cash flow. It builds all this out for you. And it's really a lead capture site. So you could take those Facebook posts. This one's called Mixo. There's Tune. There's a bunch of other ones. If we had time, I'd build 2 or 3 for you. But it just takes about a minute or 2. And then you can click and edit, and you can change it. You can change this out with your company name. You can come up with your own thing. But now you go to Facebook, you post that headline, you put in a link to this website, and someone comes here and they sign up. They sign up, they're getting those 5 emails that you put in there that are going to follow up with them. And what are you trying to do? You're trying to get them on the phone so you can have a TCA conversation and talk about mortgage acceleration. And if you can have a clear, compelling conversation with somebody about borrowing and debt, and that's really what this is all about right now, that can lead to current opportunities that are engaging, and also it can lead to a really nice pipeline of people that you can talk to over the next month, 2 months. I mean, at the end of the day, think about it. If you work the next 2 or 3 months and you had 50 to 75 conversations, that led to 5 to 10 transactions now. But it put together a pipeline of 30 to 40 to 50 people that are like, if you could get me a 5, if you could get me a 4.5, if you could get me a 5.75, I'd refinance. That starts to build your confidence, and it starts to get encouraging because when rates turn, you've got a whole bunch of people there ready, willing, and waiting to go.
So Todd, man, this has been incredible. Mortgage acceleration, math, mind, and movement. There's been a lot of good stuff shared here. Any other closing thoughts you have, or anything else you want to share before we wrap?
Just, hey, I haven't done this in a long time. Now, by the way, this thing right here, I love it. I went to Midjourney and said mortgage acceleration on a house, and look at this picture. It's a car accelerating up a ramp to a house. Isn't that cool? I love Midjourney. This one, I went in there and I actually uploaded your picture, one of your pictures, Dave, and said, use this picture. Show me a guy that's really excited about a deal. So I did a pretty nice job. I said a young guy, so we don't fit into that category anymore. But I only do this every once in a while. Between now and the end of July, if you want to earn your CLA with us and learn about all this kind of stuff and geek out with us, I've created a coupon code MCVIP 500 off. So it's $14.99. You get it for $9.99. It's set to expire. I coded it. It expires on July 30th. You can click this link, go in there, sign up, and come join us and learn a bunch of stuff.
All right, guys. All right, guys. We're going to put a link down below to this. I am a big fan of Todd Ballenger. It's got an incredible blog. It looks like he's keeping that website updated now. We'll put a link down below. Tremendous, just gift you are to the industry. And I can't recommend this training enough. I know Socia Vila has been through this, and a number of other top mortgage coaches have been through this training, and they've all said it's making me better. And I do believe, in the market ahead, you need to be a ninja. You need to be an expert at advice, which means you need to, train on content like this, and you need to use Trust Engine. Todd, go ahead and stop sharing your screen. Say bye to everyone. Any other closing thoughts you have for everyone? And
just hang in there. It's just a cycle, man. It's just a cycle.
Yeah, they come and they go.